The sun beat down on the dusty plains. It was a foreign sun, a Babylonian sun. Nothing here felt like home. The air was thick with the scent of strange spices, the murmur of a language not our own. We were exiles, torn from our land, from Jerusalem. Our home was a memory, a ghost whispering on the wind. Every day felt the same under that vast empty sky. We worked, we ate, we slept, but we never truly lived. We were just waiting, none of us knew what for. The hope that once burned so brightly had dwindled to a faint ember, almost lost in the darkness of our despair. How could we sing the Lord's song in a strange land? The grand temples of Babylon towered over us, monuments to gods of gold and gods of stone. Their power seemed absolute, their victory complete. We were a broken people, scattered like seeds on barren ground. The promises of our God felt distant, like stories told to children in another lifetime. A reminder of how far we were from the familiar hills of Judah. We looked up, faces etched with a longing that had no name. We were captives in body, in spirit. Our chains were not iron, but memory and loss. Children were born who had never seen Jerusalem. For them, this was the only world they knew. For us, the older generation, the wound was still fresh. We told them stories of our city, of the temple, of the glory of our God. We tried to keep a flame alive, but the winds of this new reality threatened to extinguish it. Among us was a young man named Ezekiel. He was a priest, but he had no temple to serve in. His sacred garments were packed away. He was 30 years old, the age he should have begun his service. Instead, he found himself by the river Shabar. His thoughts a turbulent sea beneath a calm surface. He carried the weight of his lost calling. A priest without a temple is like a bird without wings. His purpose had been stolen from him. He watched the Babylonians make offerings to their own gods by the water's edge. He saw their rituals, heard their chants. A deep sadness settled in his heart. He saw the despair in the eyes of his people. He saw the slow erosion of their faith as the years in exile stretched on. He would sit for hours by the river, wrestling with questions that had no easy answers. Why had God abandoned them? Had he forgotten his promises? Was this the end of their story? On this particular day, the 5th day of the 4th month, something felt different. The air was heavy, still. He was a vessel, emptied by sorrow, waiting to be filled. He was just a young priest by a forgotten river, in the middle of a hostile empire. He was nobody, but the sky was about to open for him. Suddenly, the stillness was broken. A wind began to blow, not from the hot south, but from the north. A great cloud was forming, a storm of impossible size and energy. It pulsed with an inner light. A fire flashed and flickered within its swirling mass. The cloud grew closer, and a brilliant light surrounded it, like the glow of heated bronze. He wanted to run, to hide, but he was frozen in place. From the heart of the fire, shapes began to emerge. Then he saw them. 4 living creatures. They had the form of a man, each with 4 faces and 4 wings. They moved with impossible speed, darting like flashes of lightning. Beside each creature, a wheel within a wheel, rims covered with eyes. Above their heads, an expanse, a platform that sparkled like awesome ice. Above the expanse, a throne like sapphire. On the throne, a figure. This, Ezekiel knew, was the glory of the Lord. When the vision appeared, Ezekiel fell on his face. The sight was too much for any mortal to bear. The raw power, the blinding light, it overwhelmed his senses. All the doubts that had gnawed at his soul, they vanished in an instant. They were replaced by a singular, crushing awareness of his own smallness. The roar of the creature's wings was like the sound of a mighty army. This was a God of terrible mobile power, a God whose throne was not fixed in Jerusalem but moved with lightning speed on wheels of fire. The divine had crashed into the world of men with unimaginable force, and Ezekiel was at the epicenter of the impact. He was being unmade and remade. The glory of God was not a comforting presence, it was a consuming fire. And Ezekiel was standing at the edge of the furnace.
Then a voice spoke, "Son of man, stand up on your feet and I will speak to you."
As the voice spoke, a spirit entered Ezekiel. It was a powerful force that lifted him and set him on his feet.
"Son of man, I am sending you to the people of Israel, to a rebellious nation that has rebelled against me." The words landed like hammer blows. Ezekiel knew the truth.
Then a hand appeared, stretched toward him. In it was a scroll, written on both sides, front and back.
Son of man, eat what is before you. Eat this scroll, then go and speak to the house of Israel. The word of God was not just to be known, it was to be ingested.
Hesitantly, Ezekiel opened his mouth. He began to eat. The scroll was filled with words of lament, mourning, and woe. But it was sweet in his mouth, as sweet as honey. He consumed God's pain for his people, and in doing so was bound to God's heart.
And yet they will not listen to you. Behold, I have made your face as hard as their faces. Like the hardest stone, harder than flint, I have made your forehead.
The entire celestial chariot, the throne of God itself, lifted up from the earth, leaving Ezekiel standing alone by the silent river. The Spirit lifted him up and took him away. He went in bitterness, and in the heat of his spirit, the hand of the Lord strong upon him. For 7 days he sat among them, completely overwhelmed, silent, and astonished. He was among them, but he was no longer one of them.
The 7 days of silence ended. He was to become a living sign, take a clay brick, and draw on it a city, Jerusalem.
He was instructed to lay siege to the tiny city. He gathered stones to build siege ramps. He was playing out their worst nightmare in the dust at their feet.
Then take an iron pan and set it up as an iron wall between you and the city. This iron wall represented the barrier that sin had created between God and his people. The message was chilling. No help was coming.
For days, Ezekiel maintained this silent, ominous tableau. It was a visual scream that forced them to confront a future they refused to imagine.
Now lie on your left side, and I will place the iniquity of the house of Israel on you. He was to lie on his left side for 390 days.
Each day represented a year of the northern kingdom's sin. He would physically embody the long, slow spiritual decay of his people. He was the message.
Lie down a second time on your right side and bear the iniquity of the house of Judah for 40 days. This was more personal, more painful.
He was a prisoner, bound not by ropes but by divine command. He was a living hourglass, days marking the countdown to Jerusalem's doom. Even in his state of paralysis, Ezekiel had to eat, but his meals were to be another prophetic sign. It was siege food.
You are to eat it as you would a barley cake, baking it in front of the people with human excrement as fuel. For a priest like Ezekiel, this was an unimaginable defilement.
Not so, sovereign Lord. I have never defiled myself. No impure meat has ever entered my mouth. He had accepted the visions, the silence, the paralysis, but this was too much.
Very well, I will let you bake your bread over cow dung instead. Ezekiel's strange diet was a physical taste of the spiritual reality of their exile. It was a bitter meal.
The strange street theater was over, but his mission was far from finished. In a vision, he was lifted by his hair and carried across the vast desert, all the way back to Jerusalem. He found himself standing at the entrance of the north gate of the inner court of the temple. Right there at the entrance stood a massive statue, the idol of jealousy.
Son of man, do you see what they are doing? The detestable things that will drive me far from my sanctuary, but you will see things that are even more detestable.
He was shown a hole in a wall. "Dig through the wall," the voice commanded. "Go in and see the wicked and detestable things they are doing here." The scene inside was a nightmare of pagan worship. The walls were covered with carved images of crawling things, unclean animals, and all the vile idols of Israel.
The Lord does not see us, the Lord has forsaken the land.
He led Ezekiel to the north gate of the Lord's house. There, a group of women sat on the ground, weeping, for Tammuz, a Babylonian god of fertility. And there, between the porch and the altar, about 25 men stood with their backs to the temple of the Lord, worshiping the sun as it rose.
Have you seen this, son of man? Therefore I will deal with them in my wrath. I will not look on them with pity or spare them.
Then, a dreadful event unfolded. Ezekiel watched as the glory of the Lord began to move. It moved to the threshold of the temple, paused for a moment as if in sorrowful hesitation, and then lifted away. God was leaving his house. The city's spiritual immune system was gone. Jerusalem was now an empty shell, unprotected and vulnerable to the judgment that was about to fall. The vision ended. He told them everything he had seen, and the final terrifying departure of his glory.
Bring the executioners of the city, each with his weapon in his hand. Immediately, 6 men appeared. With them was a 7th man, clothed in linen. Go throughout the city of Jerusalem, and put a mark on the foreheads of those who grieve and lament over all the detestable things that are done in it. Follow him through the city and kill, without showing pity or compassion. Slaughter the old men, the young men and women, the mothers and their children. Do not touch anyone who has the mark. Begin at my sanctuary. Ezekiel watched in horror as the slaughter began. The sin of the house of Israel and Judah is exceedingly great, so I will not look on them with pity or spare them. I will bring down on their own heads what they have done.
The city has fallen. Whisper. Narrator, Vo. The news of Jerusalem's fall had finally reached the exiles. The city has fallen, he whispered.
Narrator, Vo. But for Ezekiel, something else happened. The moment the news arrived, the divine restriction on his speech was lifted. Now he was free. Narrator, Vo. The nations surrounding Israel had watched its downfall. Some had gloated, some had rejoiced. They were wrong. God's justice is universal.
Voice, OS. Ammon, because you said, aha, when my sanctuary was desecrated, therefore I'm about to give you to the people of the east as a possession.
Voice, OS. Moab. Look, Judah is like all the other nations. Narrator, Vo. Their proudest cities would be laid open to the eastern invaders.
A narrator, Vo. Edom. Bitter vengeance. Desolation, Philistia. Ancient malice. Great vengeance. The divine spotlight was moving across the map. Narrator, Vo. The prophecies then turned to the great powers of the age. First was Tyre, the magnificent island city-state.
Ruler of Tyre, Vo. I am a god. I sit on the throne of a god in the heart of the seas. Voice, OS. Will you then say, I am a god in the presence of those who kill you?
Narrator, Vo. God would bring Nebuchadnezzar. It would become a bare rock. Fishermen spreading nets on empty stone. All would sink into the heart of the sea. Narrator, Vo. But even greater, Egypt in the south, a false hope for Israel. They leaned on a staff of reed. It broke, piercing their hand.
Pharaoh, Vo. This river is mine, I have made it for myself. Voice, OS. I am against you, Pharaoh, king of Egypt, you great monster.
Narrator, Vo. Hooks in the Pharaoh's jaws, pulled from his rivers, thrown into the desert. Food for beasts and birds. The great dragon of the Nile humbled and destroyed. Narrator, Vo. The land of Egypt would become a desolate wasteland for 40 years. The people of Egypt would be scattered among the nations. Narrator, Vo. Ezekiel painted a picture of the underworld, Sheol. The mighty fallen leaders of other nations would greet him.
Ghostly kings, Vo whisper, you also have become weak, as we are. You have been brought down to Sheol, narrator, Vo. In the land of the dead, the great Pharaoh was just another shade among many.
Narrator, Vo. To the exiles in Babylon, it was a message of profound hope. He showed them that God was the one pulling the strings. He was the one who raised up kings and brought down empires. Narrator, Vo. No nation is sovereign in itself. No king is a god. There is only one true king, and he sits on a throne that moves with lightning and fire. Narrator, Vo. The downfall of these arrogant nations was a necessary clearing of the stage for the next incredible act of restoration.
Our bones are dried up and our hope is gone, we are cut off.
It was in this moment of absolute hopelessness that God gave Ezekiel his most powerful vision. He found himself standing in the middle of a valley, and it was full of bones.
Son of man, can these bones live? Ezekiel looked at the field of death. As a man, the answer was obvious. No.
Sovereign Lord, you alone know. Command, prophesy to these bones and say to them, dry bones, hear the word of the Lord. This is what the Sovereign Lord says to these bones. I will make breath enter you, and you will come to life. Then you will know that I am the Lord.
As Ezekiel prophesied, a sound began, a clattering that filled the entire valley. The bones began to move. Skeletons were taking shape. Tendons began to weave themselves around the bones. Then flesh began to grow over the skeletal frames.
They lay still upon the ground. They were not yet truly alive. Command, prophesy to the breath. Come, breath from the four winds, and breathe into these slain, that they may live.
As he spoke, a wind began to stir. It entered the nostrils of the still forms on the ground. They stood up on their feet. A vast living army.
Son of man, these bones are the people of Israel. I am going to open your graves and bring you up from them. I will bring you back to the land of Israel. I will give you a new heart. I will remove from you your heart of stone and give you a heart of flesh, and I will put my spirit in you.
God had one final, breathtaking vision to share with him. He was about to witness the blueprint for the future, a new temple for a new era. The bronze man began to measure everything with meticulous precision. It was a tangible promise that worship would be restored. Then came the most glorious moment of the vision. It was the glory of the God of Israel, returning. The glory entered the new temple and filled the entire house with its overwhelming presence. God was coming home. With God's glory securely established, he saw something astonishing. Water trickled out from under the threshold, a river he could not cross. The river flowed from the temple into the desert and into the Dead Sea. The Dead Sea was healed. It began to teem with living creatures. Trees of every kind sprang up on the banks. Their fruit never failed, fresh fruit every month. The leaves along the banks were for healing. The city at the center receives a new name, Yahweh Shammah, the Lord is there. Ezekiel's journey, from desolation to restoration, from judgment to grace, culminating in the truth. God's greatest desire is to be with his people.